All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Juan Salazar, Creative Product Manager for Nuke. And today I'm going to talk about what is on the Nuke family. Actually, last time I was here a year ago, I was presenting Nuke 11. And we were doing the beta of Nuke 11 at the time. For those that were there or people that have been using Nuke 11, you know that we released last year live groups, smart vectors, and improvement to the smart vector, as Victor was talking about, the new lens distortion node, the frame server, new denoise, extended toolsets. We did all the VFX reference platform. We updated the Red and ARRI SDKs. And in Nuke Studio, we added the timeline disk caching and the AF improvements. Now, since then, we have done 7 releases, including Nuke 11.1, which has localization improvements. And I'll show you that. It has a manual and a manual mode to localize, so you manually handle the whole localization system. You have the new profile node that, if anyone was here on Chris' talk, is to see how your script is behaving and how profile what is happening on that script. And we added REMXF, and we added extended source clips for Nuke Studio. Now, on top of that, we did 369 bugs throughout the last year, which I thought was quite an interesting number to have. And no one was going to believe me that that was true. But so this is all the stuff that happened last year. And now we're about to go into, again, open beta of the next version of Nuke 11. And if you realize from this, what we are trying to do is not do major releases every year, a big thing at the end or anything. We're trying to do it more often and deliver more stuff to you. One of the main things is we are trying to put a lot more emphasis on what the artist experiences with the software. And that's especially what we have done with Nuke 11.2, which is what will be in open beta soon. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to start showing you a few bits and pieces. So shall we start on Nuke or Nuke Studio? Nuke Studio? All right, let's start with Nuke Studio. So the Nuke Studio side is more for management. For anyone that hasn't used Nuke Studio yet, is for the supervisors and leads to manage projects and distribute the shots and be able to manage the whole thing. Now, what we did for it is been asked for quite a while, is the ability to have colors based on tasks, on objects, on things in the timeline. So now I have a project items panel under my preferences where I can activate my project panel colors. Now I have colors for my different objects and different things. I can also activate it for the sequence, and now on my sequence I'll have colors based on the information that I have in there. One of the really cool things about this is I can create colors based on different file formats. So if I do a plus here, I can do, let's say that my ARRI files are going to be a specific color, or I can do a EXRs or JPEGs. This is really, really useful, especially when you are working with managing which shots are in progress, because you normally render those in JPEGs or render them in QuickTime while you are rendering your final shows in EXRs. So that way you can have the colors based on the states of what is happening throughout the show. So if I say OK to that, then I have all my colors here. It sounds quite basic, but you get quite a few bits and pieces in there. One of the other bits is always that you can assign colors just by right-clicking on any clip, assign the color that you want. You can pick a color, or just assign, let's assign a quite bright yellow that you probably don't want to burn your eyes with. But that's the type of stuff that you can do. You can also do it with versioning, so each version can have colors. And because it's attached to the API, you can attach it to your shot manager and being able to have the colors coming in by the state of your shot that is managed on the whole system. So that is the first part, and it's a very visual representation of what is happening. If I actually go to an actual sequence, you'll see a little bit more interesting things with the colors. You can see how my colors go the same from my bin into my timeline as well, or I can replace it in one or the other. I can also, when I do my create comp, if I drag that into my node graph, that is now going to be my yellow read. So it transfers all the way through in your project. I know it sounds a bit basic, but it makes a lot of sense while you're managing really, really big projects. The other thing that we have done, it was the ability to work a little bit easier on the project panel. So now you have a manual and an alphabetical order for your project bin, so you can actually set that to alphabetical, and it will reset the order in here, or you can do it by manual sorting. On this right-hand side, you'll be able to do the same, and you will have all the options that you have on the list view. So you'll have the different views that you have in here. You will have them on the menu to pick on the thumbnail view. You can obviously invert this and sort it if you're alphabetical or not. And that is kind of, again, it's all about management on the project being on really big projects. The other thing we have done is kind of fixing, really, and making a little bit more efficient the search functionality. So you can now use multiple tokens, like saying DPX, and I want to find DPX and EXRs. So now I have DPX and EXRs showing on my list. But now you have the option to decide if you want any or all the terms. If I go to all the terms, it's not going to show me anything, because there is no file that is a DPX and an EXR at the same time. But it will allow you to do a lot of queries throughout the project to find shots and your different elements. You can also have search through metadata if you wanted to, or not to include the metadata. Again, it's mostly to manage those really big projects, especially when you are conforming and distributing a lot of media. That is the Nuke Studio side. Now, let me show you what happens on the Nuke side. So I'm going to open this comp quite quickly. And there is something that has been asked for quite a bit, and I think it's going to make a lot of people happy very, very quickly. Especially if you saw Victor just a moment ago trying to do search for his deep nodes and different nodes around. We have updated the tab menu. I don't know if you can see there. Ah, yes. There's a few stars and some dots, right? The stars is because now I can favorite nodes, and I can have weighting as well on the nodes. So let's do different things. Let's actually start a node that we use quite a lot. I'm going to find the deep merge. So normally I'll have to go deep and start typing the whole word completely to get it done. Now, I don't need to. I can do capital D, capital M, and the first node that shows up is my deep merge. So you have substringing to show you what that is, and then it looks for the same letters all around into all the different nodes, and it highlights them and show you which one is the node that you actually are looking for. Now, if I want to use the deep merge a lot, I'm going to favor it, which means that next time I press tab, it's the first thing that is on my tab menu, right? Then I can do more stuff, like I'm going to go and create a transform geo. So transform geo, TG, and I have transform geo. And let's create it a couple of times. And I'm going to create, I don't know, what shall we create? Let's create this time a grade. Actually, well, a grade is easy to find. There you go. And I have a grade. If I press tab now, you can see the green circles on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side. And that is the weighting that I'm giving to those nodes. The idea is that you'll get the nodes that you create the most will get more weighting, and they will come up at the top of your list most of the time. So you don't have to search for them as much as you used to. So the idea is to save you, if you had to type most of the names of the nodes all the time, now you can just type about 3 letters, and you'll find every single node that you have or that you will use in Nuke. And that will save you quite a lot of time in seconds, but I can bet you that by the end of your day, it's going to be a massive difference. So that is the improvements to the tab menu. Oh, you can also search, I forgot about that. You can also search based on your toolbar. So if I actually tab color, for example, now I have all the color nodes based on my toolbar and find anything that is in there. So if you have any folders or menus on your toolbars from the company that you work with or your own personal group of nodes, you'll be able to find those directly through that. And you can combine that with letters. So for example, I can actually say, you know, I want, on the color menu, I want to press an I, and I'll find my invert node straight away and be able to find it in a couple of letters. So I can find, depending on what I'm looking in a specific folder, with the letters that I'm actually going to search for that. Does that make any sense? Cool. Awesome. All right. So that is creating nodes with the new tab menu. The last part of the tab menu is using it with the J key. So with the J, most of you will know, that is for finding your bookmarks. And it also works with the same string matching. So if I do M and V, it's going to show me the same things, and it's going to work in the same way. Obviously, the J menu doesn't have the favorites and waiting, because it doesn't make sense in that case. But that is that. Cool. What's next? So throughout the year, we release live groups. And a lot of people are starting to use live groups to create more gizmos in or to replace gizmos, or to replace group workflows. So what we did is give you a way of creating groups and gizmos and live groups in an easier way. So let's do, I'm going to create a transform and a blur, and let's put a grade for the sake of that, and let's create a group. And I want to display some of the properties from that into outside of that group. So normally I'll have to go and say right-click, manage user knobs, pick, find my transform, blah, 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 and do the whole thing. What I can do now is activate edit mode. And now I can just, I'm going to open this so you can see. Can simply drag and drop, and I can create a new floating slider. Or I can come into my, if I go into here, let's open that transform. And let's say I want the translate, rotate, and scale. And I can drag and drop them into my gizmo. And you can see now I have an orange dot that says that that's a new knob, a gray dot that says that that's a link knob from somewhere internally or from somewhere in the script. And if I press the dot, I can go into the internals and change the values of that given knob. So in this case, for example, let's say that the maximum is 5, and it's not going to be double, but it's going to be labeled color. And now I have a much easier way to create all my gizmos and live groups all throughout. One of the things I can do is when I drag around, not only I can put it at the bottom, but I can put it on the sides, I can put it on the left, the right, and I can add and rearrange all my gizmos in a much easier way than I was used to do. You can also hide the knobs. I can hide it by using the eye. If I go out of edit mode, that is out of my creation of that node. So it is a whole way of now adding knobs and values to your either live groups, gizmos, or groups. But there is other cases that I think are actually quite valuable for this. And I'm going to show you one more that I think is really, really cool. So let's think that I have a transform somewhere in my script, and I'm really low on the bottom of my script, on the bottom merge, but I want to move that object that I have really on the top end of that. And I want to have control over that without having to have 100 popping panels all the time on my viewer. So what I can do is simply take that transform and add it to my merge. And it will create a new user tab. I can go out of it. And now I can control that merge directly from that merge at the bottom of my script. So it will allow you to create very, very easy ways for you to add values or knobs from nodes that you're going to use a lot. You can add them into a node op or to somewhere that you're going to be looking all the time and control most of your script from a single point. So that's kind of the work that I think is going to become really, really nice and useful for you guys. Again, you can create all type of stuff. You can create your own tabs if you wanted to. If you put it at the bottom, it will create that. If I put that tab onto, I'm going to show you this with the group. I can add a tab in the middle of the whole thing and move everything that I have in there. So anything that is below that line is going to add it to the new tab. And that's how I get my new object. So again, it's all about creation and the ease of use of my groups and live groups. So what I'm going to do next is show you what else has changed. And I think a lot of you were here for the Victor presentation where he was talking about smart vectors. So again, we listened to him and to a lot of other people talking about they are great, they work amazingly, they do all this, but I have to render them. And it takes a while, and it's fine. And I would like to tweak them before I actually render them. So we decided to make them GPU enabled. Therefore, now we can just go and go smart vectors, press play, and I have my smart vectors beforehand without waiting for the render to happen. So now I can actually go decide what's the quality of my smart vectors, connect it directly to my vector distort, go again back to my RGBA, and see how that is moving, and check if that is actually moving my patch and displacing it in the way I want. We have also added a few more options. And clearly, you can still export it to a write node if you want to render it. So if you go to render farm, it's going to be faster to render a little bit there. Or in a moment, I'll show you another workflow of why I will render a few of my smart vectors. But this way, again, it just gives you a full kind of real-time moment of deciding if that is working or not with my smart vectors and be able to tweak my vector distort a lot faster and work with it. So sorry, Victor won't be able to have his coffee anymore, but his coffee time, but that's kind of what he asked for. So that is the first part. Now, the second part that we did with the smart vectors was, imagine shots. We were having, smart vectors obviously work for most of the stuff, but sometimes it doesn't work, and it's, again, as every technique, it has its own things. So one of the things that smart vector is quite complicated with is with things that occlude areas that you're going to use. So imagine a hand passing in front of the T-shirt in the case before. In this case, I want to add something into the street, and I have the car crossing the street. And what would happen if I use this with my smart vectors, what will normally tend to happen is this. So I'm going to put that checkerboard in there, and what I'm going to try is to, so you can see how that is pushing the checkerboard straight away. So I'm not going to get a good result out of that object with the smart vectors. What we used to do, and a few of us used to do this, is roto the car or roto the object, then kind of do edge extension on the plate, inside the plate, then re-render your smart vectors, and hopefully you'll get some kind of bleeding of the smart vectors going in, so you'll be able to use them. Instead of doing that, what we decided to do was to give you a mask input to the smart vector directly. So in this case, I have roto the car, and I have input the matte into the smart vectors, which means I can then do my warping without any problem with the car passing. So now I have all the object and not displacing that at all. So with this, I think we have opened a whole new set of workflows that you can do with smart vectors. You have the masking, and you have the GPU enabled, which means I can see real-time what is happening, how the smart vectors are going to be, what quality do I need with it, the blur size that I'm going to use for my SD maps, and then I can decide to mask areas, which means that now I don't use one smart vector. I can use multiple smart vectors without having a footprint on the size of my script. Of those 4 terabytes that Victor was talking about his script, I can bet you that there is at least a terabyte of just smart vector renders, because he did a bunch of smart vector renders on different areas. With this, he doesn't need to do that. Now he just have an input directly, and whenever he actually needs to, he can render those specific ones, and your footprint on the network is going to be way smaller on all your scripts. So that is the smart vector improvement. I'm being called about time, so I'm going to move quite quickly to the next part. The last bit that I want to talk to you about, there's a couple more things I want to talk about. I'll talk about this one very, very quickly, which is about localization very, very quickly. So we keep making localization better and better. We know that you're working with really big files. You're pulling from networks a lot, and you still need to work with the speed that you need. So localization has become quite an integral part for all the compers. And what we added is a few callbacks to allow everyone to know what's the state of your localization. So all the TDs can build now panels, and they can build tools for the artist to see what is going to happen with the localization. So if you haven't seen it, on 11, we actually added the kind of the green bar or the orange bar that goes on top that tells you if it is in progress, if it is localized, and if it is red, it will tell you that it's out of date. Now, with these callbacks, you'll be able to do things like making them change, the call reads change color. So, there you change color. You can have them out of date. Anything, you can create panels. So if you look at the panel at the top, it will show you what the localization is. And obviously, on the script editor, you get the callback information of what's the state of those reads, which is quite important, again, for pipelines and managing those projects. And with that, I'm going to give you, because I think we're tight on time, and then if anyone has questions, can ask me. This is everything that we have added on 11.1. So we have updated to the tab menu and the drag and drop. We have the new localization callbacks. We have updated, again, the ARRI and RED SDKs. As you know, the cameras are updating quite fast these days, so we are trying to stay up to date with them. So we have updated the SDKs again. We are doing deep compositing improvements. As Victor was talking about, more and more is getting deep, is getting into everyone's workflow. So we are looking at improving by changing the API and the way we manage the memory to have better performance with deep. So you will see that soon. Then the Nuke X Smart Vectors GPU enabled. Smart Vectors mask input, which again, I think that's going to change the way you use Smart Vectors quite a lot. And in Nuke Studio, the project panel UI to have a much better way to manage your projects and a visual way to manage your projects throughout. So with that, I think I'm trying to be on time before someone hangs me. And that is me. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, that's that. Thank you.